Welcome everyone. Welcome to LBB's Open House. It's a webinar and a podcast on how to build brands better. Today I have an absolutely awesome guest, Sakshi Chopra, who is a principal at Sequoia and has invested in some of the biggest consumer product companies that are coming out of India. I, for one, am super excited for the simple reason, as a founder, I can tell you that scaling a business is tough, right? Finding product market fit is tough enough, but going from 0 to 1 and then 1 to 100 really is an upward climb. And we'll get into that in just a bit. So I'll start with a quick introduction. Like I said, Sakshi leads growth investments at Sequoia India. She's advised on investments in consumer companies, direct-to-consumer companies, and fintech companies, including Indigo Paints, Wakefit, Faces, Go Colors, Healthkart, Paperboard, Bira. So chances are you've had a chance to shop from, or buy or are a customer of one of the companies that she's, invested in. Thank you so much for doing this, Sakshi. We really appreciate your time. And I thought I'd start with just learning a little bit more about you. How did you get into investing and why consumer products is a category?
No, thanks for having me on this chat. Pleasure to be with you guys. So I started, incidentally, I'm almost completing 10 years at Sequoia Capital this week. And I started my journey way back. Thank you. So when I started my journey way back, investing was still a very newly, I would say, new industry in India. It was there were very few funds around, and I was earlier with Deutsche Bank. Sequoia, I knew a few folks at Sequoia. They got in touch with me and they said, "Hey, we're trying to build our business in India." And we're also trying to build competency and capability around pipeline development. So do you think there could be something for you to do? And, why don't you give it a thought? And it was a very fluid conversation. And over 6 months, we got to know each other well. We tried to understand how I can come on board and add value. And finally, the journey began, in July of 2010. So that's when I got started with my investing career at Sequoia. It's been, I would say, a dream run for me. Sequoia is a very, very, I would say, premier platform, and extremely proud to be a part of it.
Yeah, and you guys are crushing it at your content marketing right now, I must say. I was going to make a tweet saying if there's any one fund that everyone should learn content marketing from, it's probably Sequoia, because you guys just have this way of riling everyone up, right? Which is amazing. No, but yeah, you're totally right. Fantastic company and VC to be with.
Yeah, and I think all the credit goes to our colleagues in the US who share a lot of wisdom because they've been in business since 1970s. So, the India team is learning a lot from them. And of course, we have a very capable team here on the ground who also helps with a lot of our PR activities.
So a decade of, venture capital, a decade of investing, what are the things that you've sort of seen change? Because you've probably seen every kind of company, come to your doorstep and pitch to you. And I'm sure you've also seen trends, come and go, right? If you were to reflect on the decade, what's it been like? And what have been the big sort of, changes internally and externally?
I would say one of the biggest changes has just been ability for companies to scale. Back then, it was just so hard to build a consumer brand. And one of the reasons for that was because, there were none of the horizontals around at that point. And today, I think the world has really changed. So a lot of consumer brands you see around today don't need the classic, distribution, which some of the traditional companies had built over, the many 15, 20, 30 years of existence in India. Today, they can go online, get themselves listed. If they have a great product, they automatically start to see traction overnight. I think the second thing that has changed is just the founder ecosystem. Back then, it wasn't very normal and I would say common to see a lot of professionals stepping out of their very, very lucrative jobs to be an entrepreneur. But today, I think that's exceptionally common. We have, Varun from Mama Earth, who spent many years with very large MNC organizations. He finally stepped out because he had a desire to be a founder. We didn't see a lot of that happening back in the day in 2010. I think we see a lot more of it today. So that's also something that has changed. And I think just the talent pool in India has expanded. It's you can today attract great talent and build a great team around you. That was very hard to come by back in the day again, because people did not know the value of ESOP, and startups was still a very, I would say, unknown animal. So very few risk takers around, very few people convinced that the startup has a life of its own. I think some of these factors have changed. It's just made our life a lot easy and far more interesting.
I can imagine. You spoke about a lot of founders leaving their sort of, professional life and wanting to start up, right? I think a related question to that is, and I can give my own example, but I think a lot of founders don't really wake up saying, "This is my TAM, this is my opportunity, this is my market size, and this is what I'm going to go after," right? It's sometimes starts as serendipitous. Sort of opportunities, which then you scratch the surface of and dig into, and then you figure out what your market is, etc., etc. Could you talk a little bit about how you perhaps even seen companies evolve? As a founder, how does one take something that you may have serendipitously started, or an opportunity that you may have walked into, and really make a go of it, right? And go from sort of idea to actually finding product market fit.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe let me talk about Beta. We met Ankur. Actually, Ankur reached out to the firm a bunch of times. I think it was back in 2013 and 14. At that point, we couldn't make it work. And then again in 2015, we decided that at that point, like he had a real idea. He had launched a young brand. He said that I think today's millennial doesn't want to drink the beer that their dads and granddads have grown up drinking, and also there was a dearth of, I would say, a lack of a variety of brands. So if you went into a bar, the only options you had were Kingfisher and maybe a few important beers. There was really nothing in between that. Also, the craft beer concept in the US had really picked up, but in India it was still missing. And he felt like, can he disrupt otherwise a very staid, traditional, rigid industry with a better quality product, which is much more fun, appeals to the younger TG, give them more variety, give them what's more in sync with global trends, and disrupt the market. We thought that was a fantastic idea. And then, Ankur had great brand sensibility. So even when the brand was very, very small, he already had great thinking around what would be the brand, the values, the ethos, the positioning, like who is the core TG, who is the communication going to be addressed towards. So I think that part of the thinking one can say that it's super early, but he had thought through all of those details right at the start. We loved that. We felt like in our mind, we felt that was very, very disruptive. And that's the reason we kind of leaned in, backed him at the early stage, and continued to back him through his journey and success. I would say that, yeah, that's one fantastic example where, really a business was built from a sheer idea into a very, very defensible business. Today, it's counted amongst the top premium craft beer brands in India, growing really fast. So we're very happy investors there.
So, beer obviously is a slightly more obvious kind of market, right? It's very easy to measure. There's enough data that's out there. Maybe could you talk a little bit about, say for instance, apparel brands or beauty brands that you may have sort of, picked up, or that you've evaluated, or or just admire, which may have started in slightly more non-obvious markets, but end up creating a niche for themselves, which in turn ends up actually being a fairly valuable business opportunity.
Sure. So maybe I'll take Mamaearth as an example. Again, we've been tracking, like, beauty is a really attractive segment for us, and we track it very closely. So when Varun literally started up, that's the time like we intersected him and we're chatting up with him. And I think initially Varun started with baby care products, and soon he decided that these products are being also used by women in general. It doesn't have to be expecting moms. He extended his product portfolio. And in our mind, like, that was a very smart thing to do. So the team tracked the progress of the company and stayed close in touch with Varun. And I think what happened there was really magic because suddenly how he disrupted the beauty industry was through a very, very sharp and clear positioning, which was very honest. So he said that today all traditional beauty brands are offering you great products, but they are loaded with chemicals. And my positioning is I'm a clean label, toxin free product, which you can use not only for they're products which are meant for your baby, an expecting mom can use them, and also women in general can use my product. And I think what he did was really build an element of trust. And that particular positioning allowed him to differentiate himself from the rest of the market. So that was sheer disruption and very out of the box thinking as well. While this trend had already picked up in the US and globally in general, but there weren't too many brands who were bringing that concept into India. And I think he was one of the early movers and he had that advantage. The second thing I think, which he did very differently from the rest of the traditional brands, was launch purely on online. So he said, I'm going to build an online first brand and I'll be an omni-channel brand, but focused on online. And GT will follow at post a certain scale, if at all. He still continues to be an online dominant brand, growing very fast, build a very commendable business. He's probably number one amongst the brands in the online category listed in personal care, or rather, if not one, I would say amongst the top 4-5 brands, growing really fast. He has a very, very strong and defensible direct-to-consumer business as well. So I think that's one good example where, literally we've seen the entire journey of a brand. Of course, there's a very long road ahead for Varun. But I think we've literally tracked the business from zero to its current scale, which has been very, very fascinating.
So let's talk a little bit about product market fit, because obviously as investors, you specifically you get in once a brand or a business has found some amount of product market fit, right? So could you talk a little bit about what does product market fit mean, and also what does it look like from a metric standpoint or even just a customer love standpoint?
Sure. So in my mind, I think product market fit means, being in an A+ market with a product that can really satisfy the needs of the market because it's truly unique or built on some real consumer insight. When that happens, I think the market pulls the product out of the startup. And that's what's happened with multiple, brands that have got created across multi categories. I would say another way to look at it is, if you're hiring sales and customer support staff rapidly to manage a very large growing base of happy, loyal customers and hopefully paying customers, then you've arrived at product market fit. So just to summarize, I think an A+ market combined with the real product insight and a great team is a winning formula for achieving product market fit. And I would say that, we saw all these factors in the case of Wakefit, which is an investment we made a year and a half back. This business kept growing like a rocket month on month. And when we dug deeper to understand what's really driving this rapid growth for the business, we realized that the consumer experience for a mattress purchase in India was absolutely broken. A customer, think about it, until a couple of years back, a customer had to go into a dusty dealer store to pick a mattress from amongst and then choose from probably 30 to 50 SKUs in a category which is not, it's not like they're very involved in that purchase. So you really can't tell one SKU from the other and figure out what's really needed for you. I think Wakefit's value prop, what we thought was fantastic, was really simple and sweet. They simplified the entire product offering into just 2 SKUs created on the back of some real R&D. Also, to add to that, they offered the consumer great quality because they priced their product 25% cheaper than the regular mattress brands. And they were able to do that because they didn't build the business through traditional offline channels where you have to give away a lot of the margin to the distributor, to the retailer. So they passed the value back to the consumer. I think what they also did, which was quite differentiated, was really offer the consumer tons of convenience. And what that really means is, they were able to customize the mattress as per your bedside. The customer just had to tell their bed measurements and they would be able to customize the mattress very quickly. It arrived at your doorstep in a very neat box packaging. also they offered a 100 days exchange policy. So, it was really convincing, a very convincing argument and sell, because if you don't like it, you can send the mattress back. I think some of these factors resulted in getting this NPS for Wakefit to almost 61. We haven't tracked it more recently, but this is, this was an NPS score with the company shared with us a while back. And also when we went on to Amazon to check their ratings, it was 4.8 on 5 on a base of close to 1,500 reviews. Now that back in the day was quite commendable. I'm sure today the number of reviews is a multiple of what it was back in the day.
Yeah.
But, I would say these are some of the winning reasons which is a clear distinction or example as to, how a company discovers product market fit. And probably to complete the triangle, I think the founding team was also stellar. It was a combination of two very strong co-founders, one with a product and R&D background, and the other with the digital marketing and customer service background. So I think just, a very good, attractive, large market combined with a great product and based on a real insight, and started up and backed by a very good founding team. And that's when magic happened.
So, in chasing product market fit, right, there's always this conundrum that founders run into, which is my business about acquisition or is it retention? So, for example, I'm assuming in Wakefit's case, it's all about acquisition, right? Because how often does a customer buy a mattress? But for instance, in Mamaearth's case, I'm assuming it was more about, acquisition, get more people to sample it, try it out, and build your base from there. So how have you seen founders, strike a balance in between this kind of push and pull effect of I need more customers, but I also need to make sure that I retain the customers that I have, because that's imperative in in making in taking two steps forward in your journey towards finding product market fit.
Yeah. So I think, look, at Sequoia, we love to back businesses that are growing very fast on the back of new customers being onboarded and acquired. But I think nothing beats the importance of retention. Otherwise, you will see that it's a very, very leaky bucket. And also they say that, it's 5x more expensive to acquire new customers versus retaining your existing customers. I would say that, retention for us is super powerful. That's a metric which we track very, very closely for all companies, within portfolio that we evaluate, because we feel that, otherwise, if you're not retaining your existing power users, your business will soon get converted into a treadmill business and have less strategic value in it. Maybe let me give you an example, from one of our portfolio companies where there's been a very, very fine balance between acquisition and retention. So Go Colors is a great example. It's a women's bottom wear brand. Now, this is a business which is built largely on the back of their own store network across the country. And I think while every new store is an acquisition tool, but your existing network of stores year on year grow on the back of your loyal customers. And therefore, if you want to continuously keep growing year on year at a consolidated level, you have to make sure that you're retaining your loyal customers, you're bringing them back, you're servicing them well, you're providing them adequate variety, you're giving them enough value to keep coming back to your brand, so that your existing network shows high SSSG, but at the same time you cautiously continue to open new stores so that you deepen your reach to new set of customers, and that acts as your acquisition tool. I would say another very good example for the industry is Nykaa. Nykaa is a great example where probably they have the most sticky customers, where probably they come back to purchase their beauty requirements multiple times a year.
Yeah.
So, we feel like retention should be your North Star. And it's more relevant for categories across apparel, beauty, health supplements, beverages, really where there is tremendous repeat purchase behavior.
Got it. So, let's take the example of Nykaa, right? Another company that I'm sort of fascinated with. I think, and I don't know about you, but I think they've done such a great job of using content as a moat, right? To drive that amount of like repeat purchase, and everything from their, influencer tie-ups to just the way they do their social media. They've done a really crack job of, creating content as a moat. Could you perhaps talk a little bit about, what are the different modes that have been created by different companies? Like you said, I think for Mamaearth, maybe it's their direct to consumer, basically sales going directly from their website to consumers. With Go Colors, like you said, it was, it's the same store sales generated. I always mess that up. So could you talk a little bit about how founders and companies should think of their moats, because that again is a critical part of finding PMF.
Yeah, sure. So I think moats have also the definition of what are moats have actually evolved and changed for consumer companies. So if you thought about it in the parlance of the earlier traditional companies, HUL, P&G, Marico, ITC, the big giants, their moats were tremendous or vast distribution network going across to almost 10 million GT outlets, and also their stronger brands being powered by at least 100 to 200 crores of advertising budgets. And that's how, I think for those kind of companies and brands, that those were the moats. Now, this is a perk that can only be enjoyed by brands that come from the stable of large established companies. But I would say what's relevant for young startups are quite different. And I think moats have therefore evolved. Therefore, if you have to think about, what are the moats for some of the new age companies that are being built on the back of online channels or more niche channels like modern trade, in my view, some of the new age moats would be continuous product innovation and your speed of innovation, your speed from innovation to launch of the brand. And that's important because, most of the age-old brands were selling to the general trade outlet, which had very limited shelf space. And therefore, if you had one great product, you doubled down, you created lots of distribution, lots of brand pull, and you would be able to grow very fast. Today's young brands are not limited by that constraint, because if you're selling online, and this holds true for categories which have very high online penetration. So if you're able to use online very effectively as a channel for distribution, I think continuous product innovation can be a huge moat, because you're not restricted by the limited shelf space. You can continuously launch newer products as you see new trends, new insights, because consumer habits are also changing and evolving, and consumers hungry for more variety. You can continuously launch new products, and I would say differentiate yourself, and that can be a continuous flywheel for you. Also, brands have figured out how to crunch timelines on timelines for new launches, and how to get their products out in the within limited budgets as well. Like every launch doesn't have to cost you tons of money. Brands have figured out that how every incremental launch can be done within a very tight budget. If it fails, you quickly retract and pull it out, and it's all good. I would say innovation is equally important for the more traditional businesses which really can't sell themselves online, or don't have that access to online channels, because they're largely more relevant for the offline world. And maybe I'll point towards, again, another Sequoia portfolio company, Indigo Paints. It's a great example. Indigo is a company Sequoia backed when it was a very, very small company, probably sub $10 million. And the largest player in comparison had revenues over $2 billion of revenue. So, we backed that company simply because we felt like that was a business being built purely on the back of innovation. It was a company which had invented new set of products. So they had their first hero product, which was metallic paints, which is used on the rooftops of homes. And then the second hero product they had was tile coat. This is again a product which is used at the front entrance or the porch of your homes. And they realized that Kerala is a very attractive market. Not only is Kerala a very premium market for paints, but also in Kerala, people really like to spend on their homes, not only the interiors of the homes, but also on the exteriors of this home. So they launched these products in that market, saw immediate traction, and business was built. Today, Indigo is probably the 5th largest decorative paints company in India. So I would say that's been a very commendable journey as well. So I think innovation is one of the strong moats a young company can focus and build over a period of time. maybe also an example on your innovation cycle and your time and your speed to launch. I think some brands like say a Hector, a Healthkart, Mama Earth are great examples. These are very agile companies who are continuously listening to consumers and the changing needs of consumers, and therefore they are best tuned, and because they also a large part of their business is online enabled, they can quickly respond. I would say in my mind, like very strong second mode is customer love. It's very high. It's highly underrated and underestimated, but it can be a huge mode. And think about, there are tons of brands being created in India today without spending much on marketing, and you still see the product going viral. I think Wakefit's a great example again. Built a very nice business with minimal marketing budgets, simply just on the back of some of the, I would say, value prop that they offered to the consumer, which was so differentiated. Also, I think they over invested in just servicing their consumers, answering every small to big query, very quick to respond if there was any poor experience. And slowly but steadily, they kind of built a business on the back of sheer consumer love. And I think that is, again, a massive moat for new age brands. I mean, finally, if you think about it, like great companies like Amazon and Apple are all built on the ethos of superior customer service and customer obsession. And Jeff Bezos talks about it in in his interviews back in the day versus even today in his newsletters to all his shareholders, that customer obsession is one clear virtue of the business. So I think customer love is definitely a moat which is powering some of the young age companies. And I would say the third one is really, distribution, new age distribution. So if you are a founder in a category which lends itself very well to online, online channel can be a huge moat for you. There are no barriers to entry. You can, if you have a great product, you can get listed. I think what most good brands try and work towards is really get into the best sellers in their category. Build up a very large database of consumer reviews, focus on customer ratings. I think building distribution through online channels, that can be an additional mode.
So I actually wanted to pick on customer love, right? Because the most apparent metric of customer love, like you said, in the case of Wakefit, could be things like NPS. But again, like you said, customer love is so nuanced, right? And one could also argue that in a lot of industries, over-indexing on customer love may not necessarily be what's needed. Case in point, and I can say this, you don't have to be controversial, but HDFC, right? Like, not towards best customer service, but no one can take away from the fact that that for them, what they've been able to deliver on is, speed, efficiency, fantastic, customer acquisition costs, and most importantly, your money is safe, right? Customer support may not answer, but your money is safe. The point that I'm making is, I think a lot of founders struggle with prioritizing what they pick, one over the other, right? It is a struggle picking and choosing, especially when you're starting out and when you're in that, pre-PMF stage or even post-PMF stage. In between, what do I do? Do I release more SKUs? Do I invest in my customer support? Do I list on Amazon? How have you seen founders, strike a balance in between all of these fairly natural conundrums to run into, and pick and choose what to invest in? And also, how do you figure out what that nuance about your business is? That key insight, right? Like you mentioned, for Mama Earth, maybe it was something as non-evident but evident as just toxic-free products. How have you seen founders strike a balance in between the more non-obvious and obvious places to invest in?
So normally I feel like it's a little bit of serendipity, and each time that Sequoia has intersected great founders and great businesses, we always feel that one big learning is that the founder is the genius behind the product idea. And that idea is always stemming from their personal experiences or from a need that they have felt. So I would say that whether it's a Mama Earth or a raw pressery or a bira, all of these products have been great ideas, which have really germinated in the minds of the founder. So either they were beer lovers and had spent large part of their lives overseas, and when they came back to the country, they were shocked to see what options they had. Or it can be Anuj, who's an extreme health enthusiast, and who basically said that I don't have the time to make fresh juices at home, but there is absolutely nothing in the market that is sugar free, that's clean label, that's good for you, and therefore started our Pro Pressery. So I would say that a lot of these are very personal experiences which result in very, very strong business ideas. So I feel that product market fit usually sits in the mind of the founder, and he or she is always the genius behind it. But what happens is that once you have hit upon the business idea and you have launched and started up, it's really important that the founder starts to surround himself or herself with the right minds to build the brand, to further evolve the brand, or build it rather, create distribution, focus on things like supply chain, and also how do you continuously keep innovating around the product so that defensibility is always up. I think in that respect, like, founders have to assess what are the priorities of their business, what are the skills that they need to augment or amplify, to achieve success. And success can have many, many versions, right? For some people, success is revenue. For some people, success is customer love. For some people, success is retention. But I think they have to recognize, and maybe I can give you a few examples, where founders, or rather what founders prioritized after they had found product market fit, and therefore what do they choose to augment or build or scale up, as the first 2-3 functions beyond product. So I would say, like, let's probably touch upon a few examples. The first in my mind that comes is Hector. Now, Hector is basically, Hector's a parent company, and their brand's name is Paperboat. And now they've also recently launched their value brand called Paperboat Swing. I think for Hector, two things were very important. One was sales and distribution, and the second was supply chain. And this was because, this product needs all year round supply of fresh fruits at affordable price points. And also, given it was, the ambition was always to be a pan-India national brand, therefore, and given the price points, they felt like GT was the obvious distribution for them. And to build a pan-India distribution, is not easy. You need team, you need great minds, you need people with experience. So for them, the two things that where they built capability was around sales and distribution and supply chain. In the case of Wakefit, they were already two very capable founders, co-founders, and they had a great product. They knew the hacks around digital marketing. They had started to see insane customer love. But really, what they needed to build very quickly was the backbone of service. And therefore, the first department that they actually augmented or hired for was customer service. Because they were very sure that they wanted to delight their customer in the entire journey, handhold them, and not have any unhappy customer. Because while this is not a category which lends itself to high repeats, but nevertheless, word of mouth is super, super important for this business. I would say in the case of Mamaearth, it was probably product development. Because again, if you want to expand and launch multiple new products, you have to have a very robust product thinking in-house. It can't be outsourced. And if you definitely want to be a stand-up and stand-out brand, you can't have me-too products. You have to have very out-of-the-box products, which are really finding the niches in the market and blowing them up and launching great products. The second, I would say, area of focus for Varun at Mamaearth was online marketing, because this was, again, a brand that was being built on through the online channels. And therefore, for him, probably these were the two big areas of investment. And in the case of, let's say, a Bira, it was decentralized manufacturing and a very robust supply chain, because this is an industry which is has very complex government regulations. It has a shelf life constraint. Also, there is a logistics cost aspect. So, you need very steady supply of and a very, I would say, consistent quality product. Think about it. One of the key ingredients for a beer is water, and water quality differs from what it is in North India to South to West to East. And therefore, just having a very, very robust manufacturing setup was one of the biggest investments Bira made. So I would say for different companies, it's different set of things.
Yeah, I would definitely not want to be a founder who has to worry about where to get water from. No, but Bira has done a phenomenal job. In fact, we had Deepak Sinha, the CMO of Bira, on Open House as well, and he just shared so many really, really interesting insights about beer as a market, and we'll get into that in just a bit. So, company, say company X, right? They found product market fit. They've raised like a shit ton of capital from Sequoia. What happens next? So, how have you seen companies manage that sort of, awkward middle stage, right? Of figuring out PMF, but then, seeing how they really inflect from a demand, a repetition, acquisition, etc. perspective. And actually, I think a company that I'd love to talk about, if you're up for it, is Paperboat, right? Because like you said, they've launched Paperboat Swing, which is super interesting, and they launched chickies, and they just really found a way to diversify what their product had to offer. So how have you seen companies, sort of strike a balance in between going through that awkward middle where they are trying to hold on to their, prior customers, who may be very different from the next cohort of customers that they're acquiring, to their company and their product?
Yeah. So I think the 0 to 1 journey is really the hardest, and that's when you have to manage multiple variables. You constantly have to iterate, tweak. Probably the hardest battles are fought in that 0 to 1 journey. My view is that our guidance to our founders in that stage is to always stay focused, and that means is that don't spread yourself and your bandwidth too wide. Therefore, if you have hit upon a great product and there is product market fit, then just go hammer that one product and get it right, versus falling into the trap of saying that revenues can be built with multiple products very early in the journey. So even for Hector, in fact, if you actually dig into Hector's history, the first product didn't do well. They had an energy drink brand called Zynga, which was probably too early for the market. India wasn't ready for that product category. Uh, and Paperboat was a side experiment that was happening in literally, like I would say, the backyard. And Neeraj's thinking around that was, that we've all, and he felt that his generation had grown up drinking Panna, Jaljeera, Nimbu Pani. And today, all those habits were, those products or those options had completely disappeared because, grandparents were not around to kind of bring back those age-old recipes. Their spouses were leading very, very busy lives, and therefore nobody really had time to go into the kitchen and make those beverages for themselves. And he felt like, why not hold on to that heritage and tradition of India, because those are fantastic products with great health benefits as well. And that was really I would say, the thinking around Paperboat, the brand. And and therefore he launched, Paperboat drinks across a bunch of flavors. Some did well, some didn't do so well. So he was very quick to withdraw the ones which didn't do well. It's, also we always, like Sequoia always advises its founders, don't fall in love with the product. Like, listen to the consumer. So if the consumer is rejecting a product, that's telling. It's better to just withdraw it versus continuously putting all your resources trying to make it work. So that was, I think, one of the smartest choices which Neeraj made early in the journey. He launched a bunch of products. The ones which did well, he doubled down on those, and the ones which didn't do well, he completely scrapped them and took them off. But I think the question which you asked is around the product adjacencies as well, which he built over a period of time. So as the brand grew, as the business grew, he started realizing that, ethnic beverages is a great platform, or rather products built on past memories is a great platform and positioning to have. And it's very extendable into multiple other products. And that's how, Paperboard Chicky came about. So yeah, so that's been the journey for, I would say, paperboard. But from what we at least like, some of the guidance that we try and share with our founders is that, probably what do you prioritize? Because when you're young, you like everything needs to get addressed, and lots of things to be done, right? So I think first starting point is obviously a great product built on insights. There's no substitute for that. And really building an organization-wide DNA of continual innovation. That is the beauty of the more recent startups. I think that's what's changed in Indian startup ecosystem today. The second is define your customer persona very, very sharply. Like, who's your core TG? That decision will allow you or give you clarity around how you should price your product. What should your marketing and communication strategy be? I think once that is sorted, you should think through and define your brand values and properties. And why that's important to do in the early part of the journey is because it will allow you to establish or have the clarity on what's the brand and product architecture you want to build. It'll also give you the clarity on what not to do. Like, will Paperboard ever launch a Coca-Cola variant? Absolutely no. That'll never happen. So I think because he thought through the brand values and properties back early in his startup journey, that gave him so much clarity as to what are the products he will absolutely never launch. Like, will he launch chips? Never. I don't think he will ever launch chips. So it's important to have that clarity. I guess the next one is really distribution, because to build revenues and scale and to be available, you need to build distribution. But I think what founders should definitely try and avoid early in their journey is to go too wide. And that means is don't go target multi-channels. Like, if one channel is working for you, it's better you deepen your distribution across that one channel and gain more market share in that channel. So if, for more premium products, if modern trade is the more suitable channel, then it's better that you make sure that you're present across all the relevant modern trade partners. You have the right shelf visibility. You have the option of even placing a promoter on store to catch the eyeballs. So I think building distribution, but building it very intelligently and recognizing which channel works well for your brand can be a great starting point too. Like, for example, in Go Colors case, they realized that they were a young brand, and a woman always focused on topwear. Like, very seldom back in the day, maybe like 6 years back, a woman really thought so hard about what she's going to wear below her kurti. It was, but at the same time, this was a young company that was saying that, hey, we will revolutionize, bottom wear as a category for women. And we'll make sure over a period of time that, she gives it adequate importance. So what was important for them to do was shadow some of the topwear brands in the ethnic wear category. And they could have only followed that strategy through a EBO network. So, they identified who were the top 2-3 brands they wanted to shadow, and they made sure that their store was co-located. And that's how they came across, or rather came about thinking of EBO as their core distribution platform. Also, in EBOs, you have a fitting room, so consumer can try more, see the entire product range, and that's how she will actually open her mind towards the category at large. Like, she will actually experiment a little bit. I think women are fantastic customers to sell to. They love exploring, they love to try new things. And Go Colors was like hit upon that insight, and they said that, hey, a store works beautifully well. We feel that we can actually upsell and cross-sell to our customer. So I think that those are some good examples as to how to think about distribution strategy as well. And finally, I guess, build hire well. I think quality is most important over quantity. Very often, founders don't want to spend too much, so they hire multiple resources. But our experience over the years has been that just hire a few good folks that matter, but net stay lean, keep burn low, resemble an NSG team, don't resemble an army battalion.
No, absolutely. So, I think hiring is such an important point, right? Because there's always this temptation to show off, right? Like, look at how many employees I have, which I, for the life of me, can't wrap my head around. How, and if you could maybe, talk in terms of an example, right? How did you say, for instance, see Bira's core team change, as they started scaling, or any company for that matter, or even Nika, or any other company? How have you seen their core team evolve, especially, like you said, as you find those moats, as you find those innovations around product or distribution? Could you talk a little bit about that? And I know this is difficult, it's difficult to generalize, but what are the kind of hires that, in your opinion, founders should just stay away from up until, they've hit certain milestones internally or externally?
I would say that you have to be really careful from the 0 to 40, 50 crore revenue journey about who you hire, and therefore a founder should prioritize what are the key functions that are relevant to their growth, and what are the key areas that they need to debottle. And obviously, a founder needs good minds. So the first, I would say, advice Sequoia always gives to its founders is hire folks that are smarter than you. Don't gather an army of people who are, basically just agreeing to what you say. You need people who can challenge and stand up to their point of view, like who have a point of view and can stand up and defend it. And even if that means sometimes opposing the founder, that's the kind of person you should hire. Now that takes a lot of courage, because that's not easy to digest, right? So I would say that that's one guidance we always give. Second is that for a young company to attract good talent, it's salary is one thing, but I think the other lever to use is ESOP, and therefore, advice has always been to founders that create generous ESOP pools so that you can actually go ahead, hire the right set of people for your business, and you can attract them with nice ESOP. And I think today the environment is very, very ripe. People understand the value of ESOP, and therefore your ability to attract that kind of talent will always be very high. I would say cultural fit is something which is really important to keep in mind when you're making these hires. So one of the no-goes is like, if you feel the person you're hiring is fantastic in from a skill set perspective and experience perspective, but you think that person is not going to thrive in your culture or in your business environment, don't go for it, because it's literally that person's going to be a fish out of water. Will try very hard, I mean, but it's not the synergy is never going to happen. So make sure that you give enough importance to that aspect, and that's why, I remember, like, Neeraj used to, from Paperboard, used to think like hundreds of times before making any senior hire, because his only worry was like, will the culture of my company get disrupted, or will they will I be able to retain the culture even with this new hire? So back in the day, when you're in the haste to build the business, you don't fully get it, but when you reflect back after so many years, you think there was so much wisdom in those words and that thinking, and that's so important. I would say that one more thing to add is, from the people who work with you from the 0 to 50, let's say 50 crore journey, could be a very different set of people versus the folks who are with you from the 50 to, let's say, 1,000 crore journey. And these are two very important phases. So no disrespect to the folks who are with you in the first phase versus the guys who are with you in the second phase. And maybe Bira is a great example, since you also spoke about it. The early part of the journey, if you looked at the core team, it comprised of very young and energetic people, but they were not from the industry. They were from very, very different backgrounds. But this team had like raw passion, hunger, and obviously there was a very distinctive product offering, and everything put together, the company was able to go very fast, grow really fast in the first 2 years since its launch. But what changed is that at some point, Ankur realized that the next wave of growth will require, a team from the industry that had the execution, not only had the execution chops. It's not like the earlier team didn't have the execution chops, but the new team would require the similar execution chops, but of also the guys who have fought this battle day in and day out. So the guys who are from the industry, who understand the nuances, and therefore are in a better position to firefight on a daily basis. And therefore, the senior team that he's attracted today is a very different set of folks. Most of them are really, people who've had prior experience in Alco Bev, who have come and now, helping them charter their journey.
No, that's awesome. I actually just realized that I have like 6 other questions for you, but Asa is giving me the death stares from the video. So I'm going to stop. But I get last dibs, so I'll get to ask you the last question. Sakshi, now we'll sort of segue into our audience questions. Everyone's been here. They've been, I'm sure, sending Asa a bunch of questions, so she'll just shoot a couple of them your way, and then I'll circle back at closer to 6 for a few final rapid fire rounds. Asa, all yours, ma'am.
Thanks. Okay, so I'm going to dive into COVID, because that's sort of been everybody's, so point. Everybody wants to know, like, I mean, fundamentals don't change, but has COVID shifted the axis a little bit? At Sequoia, are you looking at companies differently now? And if you are, what is it now that has changed?
No, I think COVID is what it did was, I would say, create a lot of turbulence for our portfolio in the month of March, April, and May. And that was an industry-wide phenomena. So a lot of the energy and time was being spent really supporting portfolio, working with founders to think through, their burn and how to extend runway. So I think that was probably the heavy lifting that was being done at Sequoia for those few months. But from a future investment standpoint, nothing changes. I think we are one of the few funds who've been around longest in the India market. Our commitment, it remains the same. We've seen multiple down cycles. I think this is just another turbulent time, and this phase shall too pass. So nothing really changes.
North Stars still remain the same.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Adarsh asked a really interesting question. He said, for startups that are based out of tier 2 and 3 cities, right, it's slightly harder attracting talent. Is that something that, you have seen at Sequoia, or you think, it's just a matter of like just having a great product?
No, I think it is a real challenge. We've seen that happen. Like, we've backed businesses based out of Jaipur. Back in the day, even Chennai wasn't really a hub for talent, but we backed businesses out of Chennai. Let's say also a few other remote cities as well. It is a fair challenge. There are two options. You can either, I would say, move your product and tech team into probably a base which is some of the metro cities where it's easier to attract the talent. Or I would say, look, build a really good stellar team. You don't need too many good people. You need a few smart minds. Go back to the drawing board and figure out, like, do you have a generous ESOP pool? Do you have a very compelling value prop for employees? I think some of those factors could be very compelling for talent, because I think today talent is very, very mobile. Earlier it was like Bangalore or Delhi or Bombay were the only hubs, but I think today talent is very, very mobile, and people are willing to shift cities. So it's not as big a disadvantage in my mind as it used to be 5 to 10 years back.
Got it. Okay, Alia, I'm going to take your question next. You had a really interesting question about if you could throw some light on how data is analyzed at Sequoia, right? So when you're like looking at decisions, when you're looking at what to invest in, industry benchmarks, right? What really goes in on there?
Sure. So, the work starts with the market assessment. We go very deep in understanding really how, what's the size of the market, what's the addressable market for this business that we're evaluating, what's the competitive intensity, what is the relative market share of the company that we are evaluating, are there moats in the business, within the industry that we're evaluating that can be built? Is it a defensible business or not? We look towards public market data to help us answer some of those questions as well. And I think when we go deep into evaluating the company metrics, there are the standard financial metrics that we all look towards. It's not only common to Sequoia. It's a standard playbook that one uses. So the standard financial metrics and the business metrics which really matter. And I would say something which, at least at Sequoia, which we pay a lot of attention to is really the team. Are we backing an A+ team? And that really matters because for us, I think, like I had earlier said, like magic only happens when you have a great product in a great market, but also backed and run by a great team. So we want to be sure that we're backing the most high quality minds and teams.
Got it. Okay. Siddharth has asked this question that Steve Jobs said that people don't know what they want unless you show it to them, right? So how do you avoid the risk of people not wanting your product after you have shown it and done the hard work?
That means you don't have product market fit.
Got it. So I think, Siddharth, that should answer your question. That was short and sweet. Okay, I'm going to take one last one, which is sort of been a common theme, again, across a lot of questions that have come in. Where do you see the maximum resilience coming in India? So there's been a lot of, conversation about China-backed production, manufacturing getting hampered. What are you seeing as resilient points in India, and what is the sort of industry you think will come back really strongly?
I think all businesses will come back quite strong. This is just a short-term blip. But what founders and teams have to be ready to do is really wear the armor and be ready to fight the next few quarters out, because obviously the economy has shrunk, and therefore it's not going to be easy for any of us, right? For all businesses will get impacted. So what you have to prioritize is really, rationalizing all possible costs. So just squeeze out all the fat from your business and make sure that you're a lean, mean fighting machine. Also, just extend your runway. Make sure that you're being able to secure at least the runway for the next few quarters, so that you can actually focus when the business comes back. You can focus on day-to-day operations versus actually firefighting for capital. And some of the calls that you take today will really help in securing the long-term future of the business. I think this is also a great time, while of course there's panic across the board and there's a lot of firefighting that's going on, but I think this is also things are stabilizing and normalizing, and we're seeing a lot of we're seeing a decent demand uptick in the months of June. Even July has started off at a decent pace. Let's see how it goes. But I would say we see reasonable demand coming back. So now that a lot of stability is slowly creeping back into the ecosystem, it's a great opportunity for founders to take a step back and think about the long-term strategy and future of the business. Because when you're going about firefighting on a day-to-day basis and running your businesses, you don't really get time to step back, think, reflect, speak to your consumers, figure out what's working for your product, what's working for your business or not. So I think this is a great time to internalize, strategize, and be ready for 2021 when things fully come back.
Got it. Suchita, I'm all done. All yours.
Fingers crossed, man, for things fully coming back. Okay, I have three quick questions for you. So first off, I just want to say thank you so much. This has been incredible. I think definitely one of my favorite points that you brought up was about that example you gave of Indigo, right? Where sometimes it's even about going after the non obvious markets or non obvious product lines. That example that you gave of the top coat on tiles and metallic coat on roofs. That's super, super interesting. So thank you so much for sharing all of these insights. I'm going to keep it really quick. This will be a mini rapid fire round that I just thought of. So first question for you, what are the companies outside of your portfolio that you love? They could be from India, outside of India, wherever, but what are the companies that you absolutely love?
I love Nika. I think very, very special. Let's see which one else. I think Wow is a fantastic brand.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these are two which come instantly to my mind.
So beauty and skincare. For those of the beauty and skincare founders on the chat today, get in touch with Sakshi. Okay, a trend. So you spoke about paperboat tapping into nostalgia as a trend. Is there any other trend that you are pretty bullish on, or at least or alternatively even consumer cohorts that you're excited about?
I think, look, the world is moving towards being more healthy, fit, and literally applying what they can eat on their face as well. So, there is, I would say, there is a huge opportunity for brands to get created, not only in beauty, clean beauty, but healthy eating. So, clean label food and beverages. I think there is tremendous opportunity in nutritional products, supplements. These are some of the emerging trends. I think another very interesting trend that will come about is pet care in India. So that's a growing market with very high online adoption. So that's again a very exciting category. Yeah, I think some of these.
And last question, which is, what are the books you recommend, podcasts you like, just places where you learn from?
Yeah, so I have more books by my bedside than I get time to read. So I have
Sounds
not
like
been able
all
to
of
keep
us.
pace. So some which are currently on my bedside are Ikigai, trying to discover what I love to do. Also, another one is Difficult Conversations. Another one which I'm reading is The Upstarts, which is really the journey of Airbnb and Uber.
Mhm.
And I love reading about Indian history. So the
Okay.
Anarchy is another one which is sitting on my bedside.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for being here. This conversation was fantastic. For everyone who's here, you can catch this conversation on a podcast nearest to you in the next week or so. We'll be posting this video on our webinar app as well. So make sure you download LBB and you check out and the relay of this conversation there. Our next guest actually is Varun from Mama Earth. So he's going to be, so he's going to be chatting with us 2 weeks from now. And after that, we also have Kusha Kapila, who will be talking to us about influencer marketing and really how brands can leverage influencers and content creators to drive reach. So lots of fun conversations coming up on LBB's Open House. Download our webinar app for more. That's it from us. Thank you so much, Sakshi. We really appreciate your time. And thank you so much to everyone for joining us. And we'll catch you at the next LBB Open House.